I love getting your questions each week. So if you're watching live, please feel free to put anything in the comments section. I'll do my very best to get to it and answer it today live. And if you're watching on replay, no worries. You can still put questions in the chat and I will answer them next week. I look forward to diving into anything that's on your mind or in your heart. All right, we do have a lot of questions today, so I want to jump right in on them and get to the heart of the matter. Question number 1. My partner and I are considering a weekly date night each week. Sometimes we do it and other weeks we don't. I'm feeling we should be consistent. What do you think? I love the idea of this. I think that having a date night really sets an intention between the two of you to have special time together. And I think making it one day a week, like if you're going to say Friday night or maybe it's a Thursday night, and sticking to that is also really beautiful, because that way all of your friends know that Friday night's your night, or Saturday night's your night, or Sunday night's your night. And then it's not an inconvenience like, oh, we can't go. And it doesn't like give an excuse to get out of date night. Not that you want to get out of date night, but you know what I mean? Where you just know that, okay, every Friday, this is going to be our night. The other thing that I think that is so great about when we have schedules like this is that it gives us something to look forward to. So it's not just floating out there like, oh, I don't know, maybe one night this week we'll do something special together. It's really setting a beautiful intention to have a night that you guys call your own. Now, sometimes that can get a little bit, I don't know, I don't really want to say boring, but I kind of do mean boring. And so you don't want to not do it because it feels like, oh, it's just you and me. You want to make it fun. And I think some of the things you can do is just the ideas that come to mind are perhaps you pick a different country that you want to visit every Friday on date night. Like if you're making date night a go out to eat, then you go to Greek food, or you go to Asian food, or you go to Italian food, and you kind of pick a theme. And maybe you even do a little research about something about one of those countries, and you talk about possibly going to visit. Or maybe you put on your list places that you want to go visit together. That would be really fun, wouldn't it? And then during dinner, you have this conversation about different things that you both brought to the table about that particular country. So that would be fun. The other thing that could be really fun is just setting something like, what's the most impactful thing that happened to me this week, and that you bring that to the conversation. Not that you're not talking about it all week long, but just kind of having something that you're like, this is special. I really want to talk about this in a special way with my special partner. And that you bring that and have that conversation so that you really get, oh gosh, this week, this was, one of the most impactful things for me, and why. And it just gives something to talk about, as opposed to kind of like the mundane things that we sort of get into, or the things that are just out there in our consciousness because of the media, or, things that are happening in the community. But it brings you back to each other. Maybe it's a soulful desire, and you don't even have to be going out to eat to do that, right? So you can say, hey, we're gonna make food at home, and you can do the same strategy with the place that you go. In fact, maybe that's even more fun, because you can make new recipes for a country, and maybe you even have like specific videos that you've picked out that you want to watch that give you some insights on some of these countries to travel to. So I love the idea. I think you should absolutely stick to a routine as best you can, of course. Like, you don't have to be rigid about it, but it gives you something really fun to look forward to. So I love the idea. I love that you're doing it. And I hope that you'll continue to do it and add a little bit of pizzazz here and there and spice it up a little bit. There's so many more ideas that are coming to me, but I'll leave it at that for now. And of course, any of the listeners, if you have anything that you do on a date night or any ideas that come to you, I would love for you to share them as well with all of the listeners on this show. All right, let's go to the next question. I'm considering doing a reiki training. Do you think it's worth spending the money? I'm thinking I can justify it, as I can use it with others when I'm teaching yoga. I'm looking for reassurance to say yes to it. What do you do when you recognize that it's hard to trust others? Oh, sorry, my little numbers here are all messed up today. So I'm going on into the next question. So I'm considering doing a Reiki training. What do you think? I'm considering doing a Reiki training. Do you think it's worth the money? I'm thinking I can justify it as I can use it with others when I'm teaching yoga. I'm looking for reassurance to say yes. Well, I always like to say it's always about your yes, right? You always want to have the hell yes, the big yes, like I'm totally in on this. So I think that's first and foremost the most important thing. I will say that I think Reiki is like coming in. I've had a lot of people talking about doing Reiki, so there must be a lot of energy out in the collective right now about energy work, which makes sense because it's something that I do believe we can all do. I don't think we have to be Reiki trained to do it, but if you're doing it for yoga and you're doing it for yourself to just have greater awareness as to how to call the energy through, I love that idea, and I think your students will love that idea. And we all kind of in our minds want to know about, oh, she's trained or she's certified. So there will be, I think, something there that really helps you when you're talking to others about your yoga class and maybe what makes you a little bit more unique. But most importantly, just that people can actually get a lot out of your class, not just the stretching, but if you're actually helping them with their energy and you're helping them with little blocks here and there, I think that's going to be a really, really great thing for you and your students to receive this kind of energy. So I'm really happy to hear that you're stepping into this training. I think you should absolutely do it. And I think for anyone else listening, I think, if you feel called to Reiki, do it. But I also just want to say that this energy is available to us all the time. And so we don't necessarily have to do. I actually, years ago, I did a Reiki training. Someone had told me you should do a shamanic Reiki training. I was like, shamanic? I didn't even know there was shamanic. And then lo and behold, someone showed up almost like that. And so I signed up to have a personalized one-on-one, and I got a lot out of it. And there was lots of techniques that honestly I don't remember today, because I felt like I can really call this energy in and utilize this energy all the time. But it was such a great reminder of the energy. So I'm absolutely all for Reiki training. I think it does really help us get our minds around how energy works, and the tools that you use can be really, really useful, but it's not necessarily necessary either. So go for it, do it. All right, let's look at the next question here. Sorry, I've got a little bit of a runny nose today. Okay, the next question. What do you do when you recognize that it's hard to trust others in relationships, when you don't trust yourself? How can I rebuild this trust in myself? Well, I love this question because you're admitting that you're not trusting yourself. And a lot of times we don't want to have that personal admission. And so I think that's a really great first step on this. And I also think that digging deep into, why is it that you don't trust yourself, without judgment though? Because if you go into that really self-hatred or that self-blame or those lower vibrational realms of really wanting to be hard on yourself, which a lot of us are today, right? We're really hard on ourselves. And so don't do that. Go into it with a really loving approach, thinking about, why is it that I don't trust others? And it probably comes down to a really core heartbreak wound that happened to you at some point in time in your life. Somewhere along the line, someone betrayed your trust, betrayed your love, and made you feel like, I thought I had a different connection with this person, and I don't. Now, chances are it's also probably rooted in childhood. A lot of these things happen to us when we're younger. And that's why sometimes they're so hard to get our finger on as we're older, because we're like, we're trying to think very logically about things, when it could be something very basic, like your best friend on the playground did something that made you not trust them. They let you drop on the ground from the jungle gyms. I don't mean to make it sound so light, but I do mean to say that these things that happen to us as children create a trauma within us, whether it's a big T or a little t. It's something that enables us to not think that we should trust others. And in some cases, we shouldn't be trusting others, right? So we want to have that healthier balance. But what I'm suggesting for you is to get to what is it that broke your trust, so that you can reframe that story and understand what had happened to you, so you can start to feel differently about other people, right? So you can step in and trust people. But before you trust people, you're also going to have a little bit of a vetting process. The best vetting process you can have is when you intuitively tune in and you go, this person makes me feel this way, which is, no, there's just something fishy. You might not even need to figure out what it is. Or, I just feel really good about this person. And so when you feel really good about this person, that's really awesome. But the next step then is to still vet them, right? So it doesn't mean we go in with judgment, but we go in with observation. We observe, are their behaviors, their words consistent? Does it feel vibrationally in alignment with how they're making me feel in this moment? Really important things to tune into. Why don't we do it? Because sometimes we're just too numb. We're not practicing tuning into ourselves. Sometimes we need to make decisions and, there's too much stress and there's too much going on. And we don't stop to really feel within ourselves how we feel about it. And we let the mind kind of run us around. Oh, this makes the most sense. All right, let's just do it. Let's just get it done. So that kind of stuff is what you want to just come into a little bit more of a peaceful place. Now, if we're talking about a bigger decision as far as trust in relationships, there's meditation, there's journaling, there's so many ways that you can get tapped in. If it's like a split second, like, do I trust this guy on the street? That you've got to go back to that really innate inner wisdom, gut feeling, that gut instinct of how are they making me feel right now? What makes sense? Yes or no? And the more you belabor some of these things, sometimes the more the mind gets involved and then it gets all twisted and it's just, So if you're feeling really numb, it's harder to tune in, and I get that. And so that's where you want to start doing a little bit more of that inner work about why you don't trust someone else. But then the second part of your question is that you're feeling like you don't trust yourself. And that's because of that hurt. There's something inside of you that's feeling really, really hurt. And you're wanting to protect yourself from experiencing that pain again with someone else. And so if you get to what that is, you'll be able to trust yourself a little bit more, because when this happens and then we hurt other people, right? I mean, it's kind of the hurt people hurt others, and not intentionally a lot of times. In fact, most of the times it's really unintentionally. And that's why we don't trust ourselves, because we've hurt someone. And then we're like, oh man, I hurt somebody and I don't want to do that again. I don't trust my decision. I don't trust that I innately knew that this was the person that I should trust. So there's a lot jammed all into that. And I think, the basic calming it down to like a really quick response is you've got to find a way to really trust your gut. And that's only through practice. I call it intuitive risk taking. And my process of intuitive risk taking is when I like to call it a hit, like an idea, like, this is what I think I should do. And then you look for validation points. I look for 3 different validation points that confirm for me that it wasn't just an emotional hit, but it really was like a real hit from my higher self that, I should do this. Because a lot of times those hits don't have a well-paved road. So hopefully that's helpful. If anyone else has any other questions on trust, I'm happy to elaborate on that in the comments. So please do comment. Okay, let's go on to the next question. I'm going through some significant transformation in my life, holding myself to a higher standard. This is impacting the relationships around me. How do I navigate that? I don't want to dictate anyone else's journey and recognize that some relationships may need to end or change. But what do I do about family? I don't want to end relationships with anybody in my family, and recognize they are not necessarily comfortable with my way of being. Any thoughts on this? I'm going to take this as sort of a 2-part, because I think, I think family can be similar, but also different. So let's talk about it in the beginning. So you're holding yourself to a higher standard. Bravo. That's wonderful. Sometimes that's hard for us individually to do, because we get kind of stuck in our own ruts and do the same things over and over. So if you're really trying to accelerate and expand your consciousness and do things a little bit differently, and yeah, really step into your purpose, your calling, and just being, if you want to say, even a more conscious person, then that brings a lot of interesting situations along with it. Meaning that as you expand and as your light gets brighter, as you sort of dismantle the ideations around situations and beliefs in your life, your light gets brighter and people start to go, oh, you're different. And you're like, yeah, I'm different and I'm happy. But when you start to do that, it shakes them and makes them feel like, well, maybe I'm supposed to be doing something. Or maybe I don't want to do anything. Most people innately, for some crazy reason, don't like change. They don't like you to change and they don't want to change. Or they want to change, but they want it to happen instantaneously overnight and they don't want to have to do the work, right? So that's oftentimes the deeper meaning there. So I think what's happening is as you raise your vibration, maybe it's as simple as you don't want to talk about like other people anymore. You don't want to be part of the gossip. I'm not saying this is what you said. I'm just saying as an example that maybe you just don't want to be part of that anymore. And you want to start talking about higher consciousness things. Maybe you don't want to talk about politics or, all of these other ideas that create a separation between people. It may be a good debate, but a lot of times it's separation. And maybe you're moving into like more unity consciousness and you're wanting to talk about things that bring more unity. I get it. People oftentimes don't want to do that. They want to have a side. They want to feel that their views and opinions are heard and validated. There's nothing wrong with that. But we have to keep remembering that everyone is on their own journey and everyone has their own free will. So as you ebb and flow in this awakening process, gradually allow yourself with ease and grace to let people fall out of your life and new people come into your life. And so that leads me to that next part, which is seek perhaps other new people in your life, which means that you're changing and you want to get out of some of your patterns. And that might mean a new friend circle, inviting new people. It might mean just spending less time. And I don't think we have to just dump anyone. In fact, I recommend not doing that. I think gradually moving away from people that drain you or that you just don't feel really connected to, then just really start saying to yourself, okay, well, I'm gonna put them sort of in this category over here, and I'm gonna prioritize my time based on what's here for me in my growth, what's here for the people that are also aligned with that growth for myself, and then where are some of the other people that are more like, yeah, they're friends, they're always going to be friends, but I don't really want to put them at the top of the list, and work through that and be honest with them. Just say, yeah, I'm really just prioritizing some things that are really important to my life and my growth, my personal growth and development. And so I don't have as much time to hang out. And I think that's a really, really fair way to handle it. Now, when it comes to family, so sort of part 2 to this, I know that can feel a little bit more sticky and tricky. And yet there's sort of a similar approach to it, I feel, is that you really just keep doing your journey. And you communicate along the way what your priorities are. And it may mean less time. And it may mean that maybe there's a holiday that you don't spend with family because you want to spend it with someone else, or an important day, or whatever that you don't want to do. I'm making this up, a drinking birthday or something. And you want to do something that's, more of a crystal bowl healing session with your friends. And that's not going to sit well with maybe brothers or sisters or other family members, parents. And I think still offering them an opportunity to join you is nice, unless you just feel like they're just going to be totally disruptive. Then, of course, use your discernment and don't bring them. But plan something that's in alignment with you, not something that makes everybody else happy. Because you know the phrase, like, if mama's not happy, nobody's happy. So it's kind of like you got to make yourself happy and communicate what it is and why it is that you are maybe taking a little bit different turn. Hey, crystal bowl healings are just so incredible. And there's nothing more that I would like to do starting out the new year from my birthday than raise my vibration. And if you're interested and willing to join me on this, I would love to have you. And if not, I totally understand. Right? So it's really just communicating to them. And as they see your light shine brighter, I think one of the things that we often see is that there's a real push-pull effect because of what we just talked about, which is they feel like they also potentially need to change, and or they don't know that they need to change, but they're feeling less secure in their footing as to all of their storylines, because you're starting to blow up yours, and that means they got to blow up theirs too if they want to spend more time with you. All right, let me know in the chat here in the comments if there's anything additional you'd like to hear about that one. That's a really good one in today's times. All right. The next question is, my friend gave me some magic mushrooms tea for microdosing. It has been in my cabinet for 2 months. While I am on board with this idea of trying mushrooms, I'm nervous. I'm nervous how it will make me feel and how I will function. I cannot be checked out during the day. I also don't really want to tell my husband I have it. I feel weird just having a cup of this tea on a Tuesday afternoon while working from home, or having a cup before he comes on Friday before we go to dinner. I also fear the idea that if it goes well, that I'm going to want to have it more and create a habit. Wow. Okay. Lots of good stuff here. Microdosing mushrooms. Look, every state has every guidelines. Some states it's legal to grow them, to sell them, to give them. Some states it's not. So I am just answering the question. Please, I've got more information in the Psychedelic Resource Guide online at bethbell.me, but I'm going to answer specifically to this question, knowing that you, the viewer, will still make your decisions based on your research. So first of all, you're nervous. You're nervous about how it's going to make you feel. Well, you don't know how it's going to make you feel until you try it. So I would say that, number one. Number two, I would also be really clear about where you received the microdosing from, and is it a trusted source? It sounds like you got it from a good friend, so there's probably nothing to worry about there. But asking some questions like, what's in it? What's the right dose? Like, what is microdosing? So you want to make sure you're microdosing, not museum dosing and not macrodosing, right? Because that'll be a completely different experience. And then you also mentioned, let's see, I want to just go back to this, and it's hard for me to see the question. You mentioned, I don't want to be checked out during the day. You're not going to be checked out. If you're microdosing, you don't even know that you've taken it. So that's kind of an interesting, I think there's just maybe a little bit of a gap in you doing a little bit more research on it so that you can feel comfortable, because you're not, if you're microdosing, you're not necessarily going to feel it. You're just going to feel a little bit of an elevation. I'm going to make an analogy to coffee in just a minute, but I want to answer the rest of this first. So I didn't tell my husband I have it. Well, why not? I mean, that's something right there to dig into. Why would you not tell your husband you have it? Is there something that you're feeling is shameful about it? I mean, like if you had coffee grinds in your cabinet, would you not tell your husband? I don't know. There's just something there that I think you got to dig into. And I feel weird just having a cup of tea on a Tuesday afternoon while working. Yeah, I think, again, the best time to take a microdose is in the morning when your gut is empty, because the whole point of it is that you want to use the gut to have an impact on your brain chemistry. And the same thing for coffee or caffeine. It goes into your gut and it has an impact on your brain chemistry. And there's a huge difference if you have an empty stomach on coffee or you have a full stomach on coffee. It's not a one-to-one analogy, but I'm going to start using coffee because I think people are like way overthinking microdosing. I just posted on LinkedIn this great article on mom's microdosing. And so it's not a new thing. It's not like only a few people are doing it. It's like a lot of people are doing it. And I'm not saying you should do it because everybody's doing it. I'm saying that I think you just need to do a little bit more reading on it, because it's kind of in the realm of coffee drinking. In fact, let's see if I can find this book. I think I have it right here. If you haven't already read Michael Pollan's book, This Is Your Mind on Plants, he very much talks about coffee. And that's why there's a coffee bean on the cover here, right? He talks about poppy seeds, and he talks about San Pedro cactus. So he talks about coffee and talks about how addictive it is, right? So I think your last part of the question was mentioning, that you also fear the idea that if it goes well, then I'm going to want to have an everyday habit. Well, we do that with coffee all the time. Now, with that said, microdosing is very much recommended to do 3 days on and 2 days off, because probably the worst thing that's going to happen if you're microdosing every single day is that you're not going to actually feel it. So it's not like you're going to want to do more and more and more and more and more. That's not, if you're microdosing, right? You're just not going to have as enhanced effects. The beauty of it is that it is softer than coffee. It's easier on your digestive system. In fact, I'm going to look after the show if there's any brain specialist that can give some kind of side-by-side. I don't think there's any clinical data. If there is and someone knows, please tell me. But a side-by-side on the effects on the brain and brain chemistry with coffee versus microdosing mushrooms, because it's actually a really, I think, beautiful way to get a little lift and just quiet the mind and calm ourselves, but also just have a little bit happier day. And it's more effective in so many ways than coffee, in my opinion. But let's see what kind of data there might be out there. And if I find it, I'll put it in the comments below. So hopefully that's helpful. Yeah. Microdosing is a beautiful thing. I think that it's really, really helpful for us to be in touch with nature, and psilocybin mushrooms definitely can help us do that. So if you have any more questions, please put them in the chat. And as I mentioned before, the psychedelic resource guide is available on bethbell.me. It's a great resource for lots of information on lots of different psychedelics, but I also talk a little bit on mushrooms in there as well. All right, let's go on to the next question. My son and husband are on a test flight in a small aircraft. Luckily, I wasn't allowed to go due to weight restrictions. Once they left, I started to have anxiety about being in a small aircraft and flying over the ocean, even though I grew up flying in a small 4-person plane with my father. I'm keeping busy, cooking and breathing to relax and let go. This anxiety is not new, and I hate it. It sneaks up like a monkey and poops on great experiences. Then I have to do all these mental gymnastics to just have fun. Any new ideas here? Yeah. Okay. So your husband and your son are on a plane, small plane, and you even have the awareness that like you've done this a lot yourself. Let me just say that your soul plan is already set, that your worrying about them flying is not going to change the outcome. So if they've set in their destiny that they are going to die together on this small aircraft today, there is nothing that you can do about it. There is no amount of worrying that is going to change the trajectory of their soul's plan. So right there, in fact, the opposite is that you may be the one that dies from all of the worrying that happens. Actually, gosh, this is good. I've got a couple of resources just at my fingertips. I didn't plan this, I promise, but power versus force. What comes to mind to say, this is David Hawkins. I'll put the links below. He does a lot about energy and vibration, and he says that worry is a vibrational level similar to hate. And so why I say that, it doesn't mean that you hate. It means that the destruction that it can do for you, that it can eat away at you, is similar to what hate does internally to someone. So you've got to let this go. You've got to let this worry go. And the reason why you're worried, the core, is you don't want to lose love. Because you don't want to lose the people that you love. Because if they're gone, then there's a sense of loss. And I get that. But you've got to get a grip on that, because that is impacting you more than anybody else, and more than any potential dangerous type of situation they could be in. They have a soul's plan. They have free will, and we do our best, but we cannot worry about other people to this degree. We cannot allow this anxiety within ourselves to eat us up, because then we're just, in a sense, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but killing ourselves slowly as opposed to just allowing the situations to really happen. So I think you're doing a good thing. You're cooking, you're breathing, you're just trying to get really like aware and conscious of things that make you feel good. And I think just continuing to let the thought go. So when a worry comes in, like, oh my God, they could crash, just be like, I can just see them having so much fun. Just switch it like that. Instead of the worry, I can see them having so much fun, and I'm so happy that they're doing it. Sounds like you already stepped into realizing that it was such a good thing that you're not there and not in the plane, so that they don't have to feel your anxiety. Because then again, it's like you can also cause situations to happen because you have that vibration and you're emanating that out to them. So that vibration of worry and anxiety does not help anyone. I know you know that. I'm just reminding you that keep doing the coping mechanisms and keep finding ways to let other people live their life stress-free. Your worry will not save them from anything. All right, let's go on to the next question. Let's see. Next question is, I always love the first Sunday in a month. Any rituals or practices that you recommend that I could put into place to help me stay grounded in my goals? First thing that comes to mind is you can have goals, but I would just switch that ever so slightly to intentions. As an overarching, and some of the goals can be underneath. They can be more outcome based. But the intention, I'm going to go back to the emotional aspect of it, that at the beginning of each month, if you want to pick that Sunday, that you really sit in the emotional feelings that you have, or that you desire and that you want to have. And so that's your focus, is spending, I would even say, like, if you can, 10 minutes comes to mind, 10 minutes, write about an emotion. If I want to feel, let's say I want to feel accomplished. I want to feel like I contributed to something in humanity in the month. Then you can look at it from the past or the future, and then also really importantly, the present of, well, in 10 minutes, like, well, what did I do last month that contributed to me helping humanity, if that's what your contribution is. And just really writing that and just sitting in the pride of everything that you've done. And if you haven't done much, do not be hard on yourself. Here, it's always so important. If you get hard on yourself, then you change the vibration into a place that's not helpful for anything. So I would sit with a loving heart about myself and then say, what could I be doing right now? Like, what's coming forward for me right now, which is the self-judgment, where do I really believe in myself? Where do I not believe in myself? Where do I have some like stickiness? Figure out where that is. And then go into the future and say, at the end of this month, I would love to say that I did A, B, and C, whatever that is. I helped one person on the road, meaning like maybe you gave money to a homeless person, or maybe you just helped them with their bag, or maybe you did something. I'm just making this up as an example. Only you know what you want to set as your emotion. And so since it was a sense of accomplishment, and I'm trying to make it also very basic so that it's applicable to everyone, that's what I would say, is spend 10 minutes on each emotion. And then if abundant is another one of them, then write for 10 minutes, like, okay, like, what do I already have? And what am I so grateful for? And what have I been given? Right. And the ease and the grace of which I've been given it to me, that it's been given to me. And then things that I have right now, and things that I'm looking to have in the future, and feel into them as though you already have them, and writing them down in your abundance, right? So that they are already part of you. And then the universe just needs to bring them to you. That's what I would do. There's so many other tips and tools and techniques, I'm sure, but that's the one that comes to mind for today. So maybe you pick 3 emotions and do 10, 10, and 10, and maybe that's 30 minutes that you've just sat and dedicated on the first Sunday of the month to you and to how you want to feel and how you want to continue to switch up your life and be really present and mindful about how you're living your life. Okay, let's take a look at the next question. On the subject of hoarding, what do you feel are the causes of it at the very root? And what is the best way to overcome it? Attack it or befriend it? Actually, yeah, I mean, you could choose either way, right? You can attack it, but there's going to be some resistance there. I actually think it's a combination of both, but the root cause of it is there is a fear of loss. There is you are attached to things. That's why people hoard things, because they don't want to lose things. And they have an association with those things that makes them feel comfortable. What if your entire, I'm not wishing this for you, and I'm not saying it's going to happen to you, but what if your entire house burned down? What would you be left with? You'd be left with beautiful memories. You'd be left with sadness because of the loss, which would be like normal. But you'd be left with freedom, because you wouldn't have the weight of all of these things around you, having to decide, where should I move it? What should I do with it? Should I store it? Should I organize it? Should I toss it? Should I give it away? Right? You'd just be like free. You'd have like a blank canvas. So if that resonates for you and you feel into like, ooh, a fresh start, like, wow, okay, the freedom, like, poof, for a moment there, I felt it. Then I would say, yeah, befriend it, but attack it, like jump in on it, like go in there and really get through it. One of the ways that I think can be helpful, though, is if you go sort of room by room, and that makes it a little bit more palatable. Because if you just are going to take your whole household and be like, okay, I'm just going to attack the whole thing, it's going to get really overwhelming really fast, and then you're not going to do it. And if I don't know what your place looks like, but if you're really hoarded, like you just have stuff everywhere and you've lived in your place for a long time, maybe you just say, I'm just going to take my desk. Like if you have a desk that you sit at, or I'm just going to take like my chair where I have all my magazines or my books or whatever you have around you, and just like make a spot that you say, I'm going to work on this spot. And I think you're going to find that once you clear the energy of that place, that oh gosh, I'm kind of inspired to do a little bit more. And if you're not ready, then you're not ready. It's fine. Then you've got like one space that's a little bit cleared. You're going to find that there is a difference in energy when you start clearing out the old. And, one of the typical practices that a lot of wealth coaches will talk about is giving and receiving energy around money, right? And so the more you give, the more room you open up to receive, and you can choose what you want to receive. So I'm using that analogy about money because it's an energy that I think a lot of people want to hoard their money. They want to hang on to their money. And when you hang on to your money, that energy around it becomes more stale, and there's more of a scarcity feeling that you might lose it. And so the more we can feel the practice of just like giving and receiving. So if you give, in fact, I'm going to give a little example. I hadn't cleaned out my closet in a little while, and I had a lot of stuff. And part of me just was like, oh, I just don't want to just like go dump it somewhere. And part of me was like, well, I could sell stuff online, like some things that still even had price tags on them. Beautiful stuff. It just was stuff that I knew I wasn't going to wear anymore, or wasn't going to wear at all. But I was like, I just don't know if I want to take the time to like sell this stuff online one by one, right? So it was kind of this real quandary for me. And I got beautifully invited to an intentional clothing exchange. And what that was a bunch of beautiful ladies got together at someone's house, and we all brought our clothes, and we dumped everything into the living room, sectioned by pants, dresses, tops, right? And so it wasn't like, oh, here's all my things. What does anybody want it? No, it was like all goes into a section. And then everybody went around and looked at all of the items and took things. And the beautiful part of it was not only did I clean a lot out of my closet, but I felt so beautiful about seeing other people excited about their new things that were my old things. And then we were on a thread together and we talked to each other on text and, sent pictures of each other in each other's clothes. And I absolutely love that because I was like, oh yeah, I really feel the beauty in giving, right? In giving. It wasn't like you bring 5 things and I bring 5 things. It wasn't. It was just bring whatever you have, whether it's 5 things or 500 things. And we just exchange. And then the rest of the things went to a donation. So then I felt like, oh, okay, well then all of those things that no one wanted or chose went to beautiful nonprofit associations. So it really was just such a great thing. So I'm just recommending that for you as well, that there are places that if you don't, or maybe you have a group of friends, like if you're, you can call up a bunch of buddies and say, hey, I got a bunch of stuff. Like I have a hard time giving away, I'm making this up, if this is for men, right? Like I have this power tool, but like, you're never going to use the power tool. Like you just know innately, like I'm probably never going to use this power tool again for X, Y, or Z reason. And yet it's a great tool and you don't want to just dump it. Right? Like, well, what if, I've never seen this, but wouldn't it be great if guys like had like, like power tool exchanges, like garage trinket exchanges, and they just like swapped tools. So it doesn't have to just be clothes. It can be anything. It can be like, you can start a new group. If you're retired and you want something to do and you want to meet other people, like-minded people, then depending upon what you have, maybe it's a book exchange. Maybe you get together and you exchange books. Maybe you even just call a local coffee shop and say, hey, I want to do like a book exchange every Friday. I'm going to, can we partner on this? And they say, sure, we'll put it out on our, on our post that every Friday from, I'm making it up, 8 to 10, you can come and bring your books and put them all in a pile and talk to each other, right? Maybe books on spirituality or books on motorbikes or books on, yoga. And so people can come to that coffee shop based on a particular topic. I mean, this is just coming to me. I love this idea. Maybe I'm going to have to do this myself, especially when it comes to books or something that we might have a lot of and want to keep circulating, right? So yeah, get on it and befriend it with all of the tips and tools that I just expressed so that it doesn't feel forced, but that you do have that like, I got to take action. And when you take action based on that intrinsic fire in your belly, like you actually feel really good about doing it because there's going to be a community or, something more that's going to come. It's such a beautiful thing. So yeah. All right. I have a couple more here. I was going to share a little personal story that I thought was so interesting. A friend of mine's son, gosh, I think he's probably about 11. He was talking to us and he was laughing and he said, hey, have you seen the video? It's not about the nail. And I was like, no, but he was laughing so much. He's like, you got to look it up. You got to look it up. So I was like, okay, sitting there. So I look it up and we watch this. I don't know. It's like 3 minutes. I'll put the link in here. And so, but hang on before you go watch it, just let me share that, there's a man and a woman sitting on a sofa and they're talking and the woman's like, oh, and I just feel this way. I just feel like I have this pressure in my head and I feel da, 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 da. Okay. So I'm kind of spoiling it, but not really, because you'll get it. You'll still laugh when you see the video. And then they pan out and they show, and the husband's like trying to he's trying to say, but I think it's because, and she's like, no, like really just, hear me out. And so she's got this nail like right in her forehead. Right. And he says, honey, I think it might be the nail that you have in your forehead. She's like, it's not about the nail. Okay. So why am I talking about this on this show? Because what I missed was this opportunity. I looked at this young lad and I said, someday when you have a relationship with a woman, all of this is going to make so much more sense to you. And he kind of laughed and he felt a little bit shy. And then the conversation turned and I felt like, well, I'm not going to, dive into this bigger adult conversation. I wish I would have. And I think that's why I felt inspired to talk about it here, that it was so perfect about men and women in relationships. She just needed to talk about how she felt, all the shades of gray about how she felt. And he's like, but the answer is so obvious. And that's men. They provide women with solutions. And where it goes wrong is that women don't want solutions. Even though the solution is so logical, it's so quick, it makes so much sense to most people. We just need to be heard. Our emotions need to be felt and expressed. And sometimes we go to the chicken farm and back. And I know that's so frustrating for men because they're just like, oh my God, that's so simple. The solution is so simple. It's not about the nail, is what the woman's going to keep saying, right? And he's going to say, but it is about the nail. So I just want to leave us on the show today with this idea and this recognition that if women can just be allowed to talk about their feelings, express themselves, feel seen and heard, and men can just hold the space for that and just be like, oh, I hear you. I hear that's really, really heavy on your heart. And the woman in the video, like, oh, she immediately snapped into, a discussion around it or feeling better about it. And if women can also recognize that men's way of loving us is to provide those logical solutions. And when we're not ready for them, we have to be able to say, honey, I know that's probably a really perfect solution for this situation, but I really need to talk about how I feel about it. Can you just be with me for a minute? And the man can sit back and go, oh, yeah, sure. But when we don't do that as women and we put that block up about their solution that is most of the time very logical and very smart, we shut them down. Just like they shut us down when they give us the solution like that without recognizing how we're feeling about it. It's so simple, and it happens in every man and woman relationship to some degree. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. You'll laugh. It's funny. But the deeper story is that men and women communicate differently and we have different needs, and we can support each other so much better when we just acknowledge those simple ideations about relationships and communication and feelings. All right. It's been so much fun with you guys today. If you've liked anything from it, please subscribe, hit the bell, like the videos. It's so helpful in the algorithm. Go to bethbell.me. There's so many more resources. I'm launching a bunch of new stuff. If you haven't already seen it, please check it out, bethbell.me. I look forward to seeing you next week at 11:11 Pacific time on Sundays. All right. Enjoy the week.